Barbarians were defeated by clothes. Archaeologists is fussed about the surviving evidence of their absence. Art historians were interested only in the portrayed upper classes. Social historians were torn between thinking clothes were either too trivial to bother or even too complex to master. And economic historians could not count them, and therefore paid no attention. Clothes were left to art colleagues plus a few enthusiastic eccentrics. Hart Negre 2009. Clothing, costumes, dress codes, and fashion. What are they, after all? Clothes define everything that covers the body, decorated or protected from the harm of atmosphere, while costume regards a more ambitious term that relates to the way of dressing. Urban social historians have perceived, though, that clothes do present a role in human interactions and lifestyles. The vocabulary used in the world of fashion can often be vague for non-experts on the subject, but it is very important for the scholars. Under the previous redefinition taken by Joan Aisher and Mary Ellen Roach Higgins, dress codes involve more than clothes. It regards makeup, perfume, cosmetic surgeries, tattoos, piercings, or any other supplementing of the body parts of the body with any kind of garment or device, including even armors. Costume, on the other hand, can describe to the dress worn in films, theaters, TV series, and other productions, and even masquerade balls and events such as the carnival. The word related to the context of when and where the clothes are used is costume. Costume is the word related to the context of when and where the clothes are used. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, dress codes dictate a compilation of rules of what a person should wear in a specific environment and if it is accepted by the society of those to actually wear that outfit in these occasions or in that specific social group. Fashion is a concept that surrounds the previous terminologies and shows how clothes trends are taken over the general population in a specific space and time, representing the behavior and social surroundings of each social group. With regards to sociology, classes present a view on how social transformation takes place in different factions, which also endorses the behavior and cultural aspects of them. Not only do they connect with the materials, production, and manufacture costs associated, but also cultural stability, fashion, and social positioning. From the material of which the clothes are made to their structure and design, they can very easily identify determined social classes, occasions, hierarchical positions, and activities portrayed by individual as well as the space-time of when and where he or she lived or lives. The sumptuary laws were a form of regime taken by the resentment of the upper classes when noticing that the lower classes were starting to imitate them. By doing so, the lower classes, the ones with enough economic power to do so, were showing a development in their social classes and improvement on their status. Sumptuary laws were designed to restrict certain social classes to wear or possess extravagant and luxurious belongings. They have existed since the ancient Greece and reached Europe by the Middle Ages. The existence of the laws in various countries reveal many concerns in medieval and early modern worlds, legislators, moralists, and religious authorities. Dress can be a trace of social class, hierarchy, and local situations, so it is taken very seriously by the people, who try to show the better appearance and image of themselves through clothes. The use of clothes also is done to show less and luxurious possessions, and are, after all, a representation of, above everything, power. Queen Elizabeth I of England, an icon of fashion, issued in 1588 a proclamation regarding the then current situation of the use of clothes and accessories. She mentioned that subjects were showing an overuse of apparel, which were not according to the laws, and that distributed the diversity of costumes alongside the kingdom areas. History of fashion. According to some scholars, dress has a definition more precise than the ones currently attributed to them. Joan Asher and Marianne Roche-Higand, researchers on the subject, believe that dress should encompass anything individuals do to modify, add to, enclose, or supplement the body. Dress can also refer to material things or ways of treating them, but the difference between them and the actual concept of fashion is that the latest is the connection between clothes and society. It is, after all, a social phenomenon. It was not until the 20th century that fashion actually started to be studied by the many categories of scholar divisions, such as sociology, anthropology, psychology, cultural studies, and art historians. Even though that already in the 16th century, the use of clothes had already started to be described in literature. Regarding history, it was only on the 18th and 19th century that the history of clothes started to be described in books. The word fashion is challenging since it can give a multiplicity of meanings, and it can be used for Western scholars as a uniquely Western occurrence since most of written history regarding it is from Western individuals. Sandra Neeson, a Canadian anthropologist, even states that anthropologists who write about dress and culture other than their own rarely address the subject of fashion. In the end, two elements can be identified in what regards fashion definition: something that is accepted by a very large number of people, and duration that it takes, a relatively short amount of time. Fashion is, in current shift during, determined by periods of history. Another factor very interesting in which regards fashion is in how men and women fashion differ. Women's dress is a subject to fashion and it is in constant change, while men's are often more subtle and tend to remain barely changed in comparison to women. This observation, however, was only perceived after the 19th century, since before then the less display for royals was equally men and women. The medieval period to Elizabethan period, we can see that, despite the mercantile development in medieval England, which attributed to London the title of central mercantile environment with a large amount of trading and cultural exchange, fashion did not portray a significant role. Paris and Italy had a major concentration of fashion innovation. However, due to the high amount of trade, London contributed a lot to the system of fashion in which regards exportation of fabrics and luxurious items used in the production of clothes. The society was very distinct, and the social classes were separated by monetary abilities. The commerce led to the development of London, where the future royals such as Henry VIII and Elizabeth I were later resided. This culminated in the fashion development of the city, giving power to luxurious fashion in an English style that aimed to dethrone the French and the Italians. During the Renaissance, actually between 1485 and 1672, women started to make self-made infusions with rose oil, among others, to develop the beauty of blossoming. It was a transitional period where the use of sumptuous fabrics like taffeta, velvet, and damask, as well as the use of perfumes, would generate a new way of living for both men and women. A 16th century portrait of King Henry VIII of England portrays him with his wide-shouldered handsome staining jacket trimmed in fur, his full short skirt like bases and jewels, bedeking everything from his sleeves to his even hat. Queen Elizabeth, for instance, put the gold in the Golden Age. She had a collection of over 2,000 dresses and she portrayed a role for the many women in England. The exaggeration of dressing was very noticeable in her, who, in the end, actually died because of fashion, having consequences for the daily dangerous makeup formula she used. The remaining European world had a fashion basis of a Spanish and French fashion. In 1672, the first fashion newspaper was published, Le Mercure Galant. The people were informed of how long the sleeves were supposed to be and how ornamented they should, for instance. Regarding the 18th century, the trend was actually to use elaborate silk embroidery, exaggerated wigs, detailed dresses and skirts regarding women, and then formal new lace coats in men, culminated in thrifted gowns and silhouette-enhancing ensembles. Fashion was blossoming in London, and the royal portrayed a very significant influence on the subject. Clothing entrepreneurs developed their business in this century since the social scene was also proliferating with more balls, court presentation, and even the theatre appearing, and they were facing more opportunities to design and sell more. In the end, English fashionists started to follow the pattern of less is more, and the extravagance of the previous century started to slowly go away. The French Revolution actually portrayed a very important role, culminating in an obsession of whatever is English, including, of course, dressing. Victorian fashion saw the 18th century clothes modernized for both men and women. Men started to use tailcoats that were shortened at the front, and trousers started to be more acceptable and fashionable. Women used formal gowns with incorporated corsets, but the waistlines were now more natural. They would also use short puff sleeves, for instance. In this period, the Industrial Revolution was taking place, and the production of clothes boomed. The classes were divided between luxurious clothes and then low-value manufacturing clothes for the industrial workers and the poorest people. The 20th century brought many trends into the British fashion, to a way that can be divided between even decades. This phenomenon was attributed to the various important events that occurred during the century, such as the World Wars. During the First World War, it became more suitable for women to wear trousers, since the fabrics actually had to be limited. After the war, fashion started to proliferate again and full skirts became the highest of fashion. In the latest centuries, fashion became more diverse and rebellious with the hippies movement, the punk styles, and other influences, which culminated in London being one of the fashion capitals of the world. Nowadays, fashion has been globalized, and fashion design incorporates elements of other populations' culture into their work. Everything can be turned into something new for fashion.